Last week we looked at an update of the Trail 90. There it still is. I bought an ignition coil for it and they sent me the wrong one. They sent me one for a CDI ignition for the Chinese pit bike engines. So that's not going to work on this. Speaking of the pit bike engines though, when I first got this frame, I bought the non-running Honda engine and did a top end rebuild on it because it had no compression, it had a broken piston ring, and you know, I wanted to put a real Honda engine in it. For one thing, I wanted this, the dual range gearbox, but and the Chinese clone engines don't have that. But also I just wanted to get my hands on a Honda engine and, you know, delve into it and work on it some, and I wanted a Honda engine at least to fit it. But you know, the China clone engines are higher performance. They've bored and stroked them and put bigger valve heads on them, higher compression, better cams, better ignition, better electrics, 12-volt electrics, and with more output, so they will they'll drive lighting and other accessories better. And CDI ignition, they'll run without a battery. It's possible to make these run without a battery, but not very well. But you know, they're just the China clone engines are all around really better engines for day-to-day use. So I wanted to buy one, and especially in light of the prices on them. And what I thought about doing was get this engine running, which it does run somewhat, and get this thing rideable, and then pull this engine back out and stick a Honda clone engine in it for 125 or so for more performance. So I did buy a new 125 China clone engine, but then I didn't want to pull this engine out. So I got to thinking, you know, maybe something else. Maybe I thought about getting an earlier Trail 90, the CT200 version, which, by the way, doesn't refer to the displacement. It's still, in fact, they were slightly less displacement, 87cc. And then there were the Hunter Cubs that came before that were only 50 and 55cc. But in fact, this overlay sprocket setup came from a CT200. But I thought about buying the CT200 frame and throwing one of the Honda clone engines in it. But then I read a ride report on one of the forums by a guy who rode a CT70, and I believe he had a clone engine in it. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm fairly sure. But anyway, he rode a CT70 from Louisiana to Sturgis, and that's a pretty good ride. And this was a grown man, you know, riding that far on 10-inch wheels. So that kind of got me thinking. Of course, I didn't want a CT70. I like the CT90 a lot better than a CT70. But it got me thinking, maybe something with a real frame. So then I thought about this. A friend of mine gave me this bike, and it was complete for the most part when he gave it to me, but it wasn't running, wasn't locked up, but it just, you know, was poor condition and needed a lot of little things to make it run. And I wasn't really interested enough in it to want to spend the time and effort and money to get it running. So, but it had the forks, wheels, and so on it. But I got to thinking, well, first I was thinking, you know, it's too bad this thing won't accept one of the horizontal engines, because this frame would be a pretty good frame if it would, for putting one of the China clone engines in. But then I remembered, see, this is an XL80, and the predecessor to this is the XL75. But then I remembered the XL70 Honda made does accept the horizontal engine. It came with a 70cc horizontal engine in it, the same engine as the CT70. And it's still a fairly small bike, but it's got bigger wheels and everything than the CT70. CT70 has 10-inch wheels. This thing has a 12 in the back and a 14 on the front. Had, I should say. And also, these frames will accept swing arms and forks and whatnot from up to an XL125. So that means that you can put, with the proper forks and everything, you can put a 19-inch front at least and an 18-inch rear on it. And longer swing arm, of course, and make it basically about the same size as an XL125 physically, while accepting one of those inexpensive horizontal Honda clone China engines. So, I started pulling parts off this, and I bought a frame for an XL70 and started putting some of those parts on it, and put my 125, brand new China 125 horizontal engine on it. And here it is. This is the new project. This is part of why the CT90 project has been is not further along than it is, because I've been working on this thing. As you can see, I took, or maybe you can't see it, I don't know, but I took the entire front end off of the XL80S and stuck it on here. The XL80S is a 1981 model, and this is a 1974 model XL70 frame, but it still fit. And front end and wheel, and there's the engine with brand new carb wrapped up in a sandwich baggie to keep water from getting in it. It says SSR, but it's a Jialing, and from what I hear, these actually have better components. They have the small valve head. The Lifans have a big valve head, but you can swap the Lifan head onto this, and the Lifan heads are readily available. So if you want higher performance, you put that head on it. And you can also go up to 58mm in bore, which on this engine you just swap the components out, and on this engine that would make right at 160 cc's, I think. But this is a good engine as it is. It's got a longer stroke than the Lifan 125s. It's a 57mm stroke, and from what I hear and read, the transmission components in this engine are beefed up compared to the Lifan. So, also it's got an aluminum jug. The Lifan has a cast iron jug. I tend to like cast iron jugs better, but some people say the aluminum jugs are better. I don't know. But either way, if I put a larger piston and cylinder on it, I'll be using a Lifan jug, so it'll be cast iron. But like I was saying, this has a longer stroke. The Lifan 125s have some of them are 52.4, I believe, stroke, and some of them are 54mm stroke with a little bit smaller bore than the shorter stroke ones. This has a 57mm stroke, so That's good for low end torque, and the small valve head is also good for low end torque. So this actually would make a good engine for a CT90. But this is the same crankshaft that, and in fact the same basic engine as the Piranha 140. The only difference between this engine and the Piranha 140cc engine is the barrel and the head. And you can swap that out, as I was saying. But I'm going to leave it at 125 for a while. So I put the swing arm from the XR100 on it. Remember the XR100 that I used the forks and some other parts from for the CT90. Well, that's the swing arm from it, and it bolted right in place. That's the rear wheel from the XL80. So I've got to put some more spacers in there when I put the chain in it. And I'll probably ride it like this, but as I was saying, I do intend to put bigger wheels and tires on it and get a set of 125 forks to put on it. But that's the tank from the XR100. And previous owner of this bike had apparently started converting it to a pit bike, to use a pit bike tank, plastic tank. And I thought about doing that, but then I decided, no, I've got this nice metal tank, so I'm going to convert it. But I'm going to move, you know, it won't fit down on those studs, so I'm going to weld a piece on top of the top bar here and have the tank setting up fairly high, about like that, which will give me a little better gravity feed to the carburetor, and I think it looks pretty good that way. So there it is. And you can look forward to more about this bike, because I plan to have a lot of fun with it.